Okay, so today's session is mostly going to be about negotiating and bargaining. That's stuff you're going to do in your role plays, face-to-face, and in your workplace. Face-to-face, the meaty end of the advocacy. When you've done all of that backup work, all of that written work, and when it's reached the point where you need to face-to-face with someone to reach an agreement. Today's session, you should be able to identify and contact the most appropriate individuals. So we're just going to have a short lesson at the beginning here, which I'll snip for those who are listening to this. Yes, because that's why I'm wearing the headphones. Yes, this is being recorded. And it's going to go onto the online lessons for you guys to enjoy at a later date. This first part of the lesson will be about identifying and contacting the appropriate people in the organisation or the appropriate organisations and representing the client to get the best outcome for them, as well as supporting them in making a complaint. You guys will remember, because you're such attentive little students, that the advocacy process has a few different steps to it. It has the beginning where we assess their needs, check whether they can advocate for themselves or get them to do that, assuming that you're needing to still be involved, get their informed consent, you will remember, because it needs to be informed, gather some information together prior to actually talking to the person involved. Check with the client on any offers and discuss the progress. That's the 7 steps we've got, and previous sessions we've looked at those first 4. Today we're going to be focusing on 4, 5 and 6. A bit more on the gathering info, because what we've done so far has been the last ditch advocacy, ombudsman, services like that, for going to court and that sort of thing. We'll get back to that. There's a reason why I've given you all that grounding, but there's also some other info. And today we'll be focusing also on communicating, doing the face-to-face, clarifying with the client on offers. Focusing in on just that, gathering the adequate information. Some of the research, can you tell me, what's some of the research that you might need to do in order to be a good advocate, in order to not be kicking yourself afterwards, thinking, damn it, I should have done that? So we already know about I'll take it as given, but I can put that on the board. So the ombudsman and the courts and the last ditch spaces, yeah, that's good. Who else? Have a think about it. Have a think about the research you're going to do prior to face-to-face talking with your client, with the person whoever that might be. There's a little clue there. Whoever that might be. I'll give you 2 minutes. Okay. So you've all had a chance to think about some of the research. We've had a bit of a chat about it. The information gathering stage is kind of crucial, because before you go into any sort of negotiation, any sort of discussion, you're not going to get a second chance at it. Agreements are going to be made, usually, wherever possible. Therefore, check what the organisation's policies are, whether that's a government department, whether that's an individual organisation. Check what their own policies are to see what their complaints processes are all about, because you want to follow those. But it'll also give you key people to contact. But as well as the organisation's process, you'd also want to look again at what the law says, because maybe their policies aren't quite up with some of the standards and some of the legal requirements they've got. Yep. In addition to the policies, sometimes organisations have said that they've got a Charter of Rights or a Code of Conduct, or maybe industries have. And they've signed up, so they've said that clients have always got the right to appeal any decisions. It's a great one. That might be in their Charter of Rights, but it might not have made it to the space that we're talking about here for the policy. So to be able to quote that, to be able to point that out to people gives you a bit of extra leverage, a bit of extra mileage to be able to say this is your Charter of Rights, or this is the code of conduct that the industry expects under WHS laws. So any of those sort of spaces, check that. By the way, you might notice you guys have mostly done work legally and ethically, another unit, or at some point you will, where we talked about those overlapping circles of how decisions are made based on the legal side, the agency policy, and the code of ethics, and how they quite often reinforce and overlap. You remember that? Okay. This is relevant. It's not just that subject's over now, we don't have to worry about it. It follows on throughout all of your studies. All of this stuff is blending together now. Do some research also to find out who the right person is who can make the decision. So arrange to meet the right person if it's going to be a face-to-face discussion, so you can direct your complaint directly to that person with your client alongside you if necessary, if that's appropriate. But find the right person, because sometimes you get sort of directed to the wrong person and you think you've got it all set up, and they say, oh, I'm not really in a position to make any decision on that. I can't really, it's out of my power. So check that they will be able to and have that discussion. One more reminder again that you should make sure you don't disclose anything without the client's permission. They might want to know a fair bit of detail on the phone before you meet, and that can be useful, but it can also be, if you're there to actually support your client to make a decision, you don't really want to have had the discussion without them. They might, sometimes they just want to have their say. Sometimes they just want to have actually fronted the organisation, and that's actually good therapy, and it's good learning about advocacy, and it's good experience for them to do that themselves. So if you've already preempted that, so yeah, make sure you don't disclose anything without the client's permission. So we've looked at the gathering adequate information. That's that research that I just talked about. We'll come back to that. But the next stage is actually the negotiation, the bargaining, the face-to-face that we'd have to do with the client, with that person.